Hey everybody. So we're doing something a little different today. We're doing a hybrid recording of sorts. This is going to be the third episode of the Coast Guard Career Central podcast, and it is also a live recording on YouTube. I'm finding it difficult at times to keep up with both the podcast and the YouTube channel, so we're going to try merging them today. And part of that is just for the sake of catching up, but also part of that is by necessity of weather. I've mentioned in the past that I record most of my videos and the podcast episodes from my studio shed outside, and I find that that gets actually with opening the doors to the shed actually makes for really good audio. And if it's nice outside, I get really good natural sunlight. That's all the lighting for my videos is just sunlight. So uh, we've had miserable weather the last week or so, and so it's next to impossible to do videos from my shed. If it's not the pounding rain, it's just not enough brightness to do videos. So I decided to come on here, and I don't know how the audio quality is going to play out for the podcast. As I said, I record them outside because you avoid the reverb by having a nice open atmosphere. It tends to make the audio pretty good. And so we're foregoing that today. So when I replay this back in post production, we'll see how it sounds. But that's kind of where we're at right now. I hope everybody had a happy new year, and we're on our way now into 2024, and it just seems like the years just keep coming. And so I hope everyone's doing well. I wanted to just answer some questions that I've not answered yet on the channel, and if questions come up in the chat, I will. I don't promise that I'll answer them, but I will try if I'm able to. And as I've said in the past, it's I'm having a little more trouble now keeping up with the comments than I used to, which I guess is a good problem to have. But I don't want to leave anybody hanging. So I'm going to try to answer a few that I have here. And I'm also going to answer a couple that contacted me through my voicemail number. For those who don't know, I started a voicemail in addition to the channel because I started getting a lot of people asking me how they can connect with me. So I do have a voicemail, and I'll post the number to that in the chat later on. But there is also a short video out that has that number out there. So that's also something that's available. But let's just answer a couple questions here. I really like this one I wanted to get to. This is from Erica Robinson. He says, "Hey there, I'm 35 and I've been interested in joining the Coast Guard for several months now, but I didn't pass the ASVAB. Got a 27 the first time, so I got discouraged, but I can't get the urge to join out of my heart. I'm pretty sure it's a move I want to make, but I'm fearful about the uncertainty of it. Do you have any advice for me? I could really use it." I love the open ended questions that are just like, tell me what to do. But I appreciate the openness of that question. First off, I want to just say that don't get disheartened, don't get discouraged. The ASVAB, I took the ASVAB when I was 17, when I was still in high school, and to me, honestly, it was pretty easy, but it was the content of high school, if that makes sense. I mean, it felt like I was taking a test that I would based on what I'd learned in school. So at 35, it's been a long time since you've been through high school. So I wouldn't get discouraged. It's not an intelligence test to me. It doesn't have any. It doesn't say anything one way or the other about one's intelligence. I think it's very passable, and I think that if you have that much drive for it, don't let that be the reason why you don't go for it. There are a lot of resources out there for studying. I've used Cram a lot, and um, now I'm blanking on what it's called. But there, if you Google, I mean, there's a lot of great flashcard websites, but also like the Complete Idiot's Guide to the or ASVAB for Dummies. There's books like that. Um, I'm not saying that you're a dummy, but that's a resource that's available. And I've used that in the past for other subjects that I've studied. It's very helpful. All that just to say it's very passable, and you definitely can come back and get through that. So don't let that stop you. For the second part of the question, I'm pretty sure it's a move I want to make, but I'm fearful about the uncertainty of it. Do you have any advice for me? That is, I mean, I will first, I'll start off by giving my stump speech answer that I say all the time, which is basically that I can't give you an answer because it's your life, it's not mine. So that's my chicken answer. But to try to give you a little something there, I would say that I mean, if you feel that it's a move you want to make, then definitely pursue it as far as you can without making the commitment. And when you get to wherever that point is, before you have to make the commitment, then take everything you know and make a chart, pros and cons, ask all those soul searching questions, talk to people that you're close to, and maybe ask old guys like me for our advice. But it's definitely one of those things that you just have to take all the information you can and try to make an informed decision. Now, you don't mention if it's active duty or reserve, so I'm not sure which one. That definitely makes a difference insofar as what your commitment is going to be, obviously. So there's a lot of variables here that I don't know. I mean, if you're married, if you have kids, if you have a really good job, if you have family that's close by, maybe you have parents that are getting older and you want to be nearby to support them. I mean, these are all really important considerations to make if you're thinking about joining, whether you're thinking about joining reserve or active. But honestly, if you're thinking of joining active duty, really need to consider that, because the Coast Guard is not going to guarantee you being close to home when you join. So that's definitely something to think about. That's an advantage to the reserves for me. I've been able to spend my entire career pretty much relatively close to home. Uh, I've I've been stationed as far as about 300 miles away from home, but that was kind of my own choice at the time. And outside of that, I've been within 90 minutes of my home for most of my career. So it it's definitely something. If you're thinking of going reserves, it's a lot more doable at 35 without me knowing the details, right? So like I said, I don't know if you're married, I don't know if you have kids. There's a lot of other factors that are going to play into it. But all that out the window, if in your heart it's something that you really feel drawn to, then I would absolutely explore all the avenues you can, find out as much information, think about which rating you'd be interested in, and just get as much information. I always say knowledge is power. It's going to help you make an informed decision, and it's it might just come down to writing a T chart and just saying the pros and cons. One column the pros, one column the cons, and kind of just go down it and see what you arrive at. But definitely think about it. Study, try to take the ASVAB again, and And if you take it again and pass it, come back to this channel and ask again, or just give me an update, or even just comment again, filling in some of those variables that I talked about in terms of your life situation that might make a difference for your decision. I hope that helped. Let's try to answer a couple more questions here. Okay. I am going to Cape May, January 29th. I'm from South Carolina. What to expect for outdoor PT? All right. I'm glad I got to this one in time. We've still got a couple weeks before you're going. And somebody answered in the comments, I graduated a few weeks ago. The initial run will take place outside or inside, depending on how cold it is, and the sit-up, push-up portion will take place inside. So thank you for that. That's one of those situations where somebody who just went through boot camp has way better current information than I do. So that's awesome. The one thing I'll add is if this question has to do with anything outside of the initial assessment, then I think I can give helpful information there. Um, it's pretty much anything and everything that you can do outside, you'll do outside. So push-ups, squats, a lot of like piece exercise, like the piece being like your rifle, like a lot of holds, like this thing here. You can't see this on the audio podcast, but I'm basically raising my arm and holding it out, and a lot of like holding it like this for a long time, or holding it up like this for a long time. And it's amazing. It's amazing how uh, even a plastic water bottle will be agonizing if you hold it over your head for long enough. Anything is torturous if you have to hold it up for long enough. Anyway, I went through Cape May, late September to late November, and that was definitely the cold season. But I think it was kind of a good spot because it was pre-snow and it was post summer sweltering heat, but it was pretty cold, and it wasn't really a lot of fun being out in the wet grass doing push-ups. Uh, Not a lot of fun. But to answer the question, what to expect for outdoor PT, kind of as the person who answered the comment said, a lot of it depends on how cold it is. But indoor or outdoor is kind of, as I recall, was kind of interchangeable, meaning that any of the PT we did inside, we could do outside and vice versa. A lot of times would just be a matter of how the weather was, and other times it would just be where we are at the time that we screwed up. If we did something that merited incentive training, then sometimes we would just drop and do it right there. So anyway, I hope that kind of answers that. And let's see. So here's a couple good ones. All right. I'm looking at joining the reserves. How often and common do deployments pop up for BM? How long are they typically and most common spot? I'm going to tread lightly on this one. I'm not a BM. And I will say that I know I've said this in the past. I am working on getting some other ratings. I have an OS recruiter lined up that I'm going to bring on here soon. I promise. And it's been really tough coordinating time, but I don't want to say too much, but I might have a company commander on here at some point. But I don't want to promise it, but I'm trying. I promise. But so I'm not a BM, but in my experience, if we're talking involuntary deployments, they really don't happen as much as you might think. They tend to happen more for big emergencies, big disaster type situations, and a lot. I'm an MST, so obviously my purview of this is from the perspective of an MST, but to me it seems like that's the rating that gets called up a lot for disasters and things like that, because a lot of hurricanes, it, a lot of it entails or involves oil getting in the water somewhere. Um, I think for the reserves in general, deployments deployments, I say deployments in quotes because it's not necessarily a deployment, doesn't mean flying off to another country. It's just activating. It could even just be to support. I define deployments as anytime you're activating to support, whether it's to support a specific operation or maybe to do parental leave for somebody. So where you're essentially augmenting active duty in their day-to-day job. Anyway, point being, in my experience, deployments are available all the time. You go into direct access, you type in your rating and your rank, and you can even put down like what area geographically you're interested in, and it'll pop up with a database of possible places you could go to. And I've been in the Coast Guard for over 19 years now, and I've been involuntarily called up once. So that's my anecdotal answer to that. All right, and I see I have a couple of questions here in the chat. I will answer you in just a moment here. I will answer a couple more of these questions from the past that I haven't gotten to. I met a Coast Guard Reserve recruiter a few months back, and I've been studying and researching nonstop, but I haven't made the call yet. Few questions. What is the likelihood of being sent overseas? I have no problem with it. I'm just curious. If I were to go the reservist recruiter next week, what would the timeline be of when I get sent to boot camp? Okay, those are good questions. The first question I kind of just answered in a way. What's the likelihood of being sent overseas? Very small, very small. But I don't never say never. All right, but it's very, very unlikely that would happen. And then if I were to go to the reserves next week, what would be the timeline of when I get sent to boot camp? Another question that involves a lot of variables, and I can't give you an exact answer. For me, I think it was about, let's see, it was about 9 months from when I first called the recruiter to when I went to boot camp. However, I intended it that way. I did a semester of school, and then my grandfather was very sick. He was dying, and I was taking care of him. So I didn't want to go right away. So I don't think that's necessarily an indicator of how long it would take. I think that this was almost 20 years ago, though. So it's not an updated current answer. But I think a lot of the variables to that are going to be what rating you're going, what's the wait list, the projected wait list time for that rating for a school, and just how many billets they have in that rating. Those are all going to make a difference for that timeline. But and it also is a matter of like your preference, your situation, what's going on in your life. You might be able to get there sooner than later, and again, ratings is going to be a big part of that, what rating you want to go. Okay, let's see. I'm going to get to the question here in the chat. I have two questions. Hope it's no problem. There's no line of live chat questions, so you're good to go with the two questions. I'm preparing for basic, and I'm an amateur bodybuilder who's building my stamina. Currently, my 1.5, I can complete in 11:31. Any further tips? An amateur bodybuilder. Okay, that's cool. Well, what kind of tips are you looking for? If you're working on, I mean, stamina that's great. I've said that before. Being big and strong is awesome, but it's really not gonna help. I mean, it helps in that if you can knock out a lot of push-ups, if you can hold a plank for a really long time, I mean, you're golden. So that's great. But I really, really stress the endurance part of PT. I can't overemphasize that how important that part is to just to be able to keep going. And it doesn't have to be really fast. It's just being able to not stop, to not drop. That's what's going to get the CCs all on your ass really quick. If they see a genuine effort and that you're giving it everything you have, it's just grit. You just have to be able to keep going and push through the pain. And that's really the key. Is so doing what you're doing is probably great. If you're working on your stamina, I mean, that's great. 1.5 and 11:31. I think that's I don't off the top of my head, but I believe the standard is like 12:50. I think so. Yeah, you're good there. It's a lot faster than I could run it right now. Secondly, I'm currently someone who's planning on signing a 6-year contract versus a 4-year due to my plans. I'm also wanting to go the IT route. Which would you recommend? If you're just asking, like, between a 6-year and a 4-year, um, it's probably pretty negligible. I think the only thing I would say is maybe go the 4-year, um, in case you end up hating it, and that way you don't have to be in it as long. But on the other hand, having a 6-year contract, maybe that locks you in to a place you want to be longer. Whereas, like, let's say you're at a unit, like maybe you do a 3-year rotation. Year 3, you go to a new unit and you really love that unit, but then you hit 4 years, and then they're like, "Well, you can re-enlist, but we need you over here on the other side of the country. So that's the conditions if you want to re-enlist." There's always that consideration. That's pretty unlikely, I think, but those are just a couple little thoughts that I have that I would consider. Other than that, I don't think it's really a big difference. Okay. In terms of tips, I'm studying rather heavily to prepare for basics such as memorizing my general orders. How did you memorize your info and swimming, as that's my main weakness? Okay. This I'll start backwards. So the swimming part, that's a challenge. If you struggle with swimming, that will be a challenge for you. However, I've spoken with people who had to go through remedial swim, and they've all said that it was actually a pretty pleasant experience, all things being considered, because you do have to get up earlier, but you get to be not with mean CCs yelling at you, and they make sure you know how to swim, and then you get to take a shower by yourself without being rigidly timed, and you get to go back and rejoin the company. So uh, I wasn't in remedial swim, so I can't speak personally, but I think if you're a poor swimmer but you know how to swim, that's great. I mean, not great that you're not a good swimmer, but like great that, as opposed to not being able to swim at all. If you couldn't swim at all, I think that would be pretty tough. If you just kind of are a weak swimmer, I think they can work with that. And from what I've heard from people that have gone through it, even people that didn't have a lot of water confidence going in, the remedial swim program is pretty good, pretty effective, and they don't walk away from it being like feeling like it was an extra burden. I think for a lot of people, it's almost kind of like a refreshing break from the the grind of the company itself. So 4 versus 6 as becoming a warrant officer is my ultimate engagement, which I seek to excel within the Coast Guard. Yeah, I would say if you're looking long term, I probably would just take the longer enlistment than just all things being equal. Let's see. There was a couple questions. There were a couple people messaged my voicemail line I wanted to get to here. Let's see. Um, okay, this is a really good one. I have a question about the reserves. By also having a captain's license, I'm merchant marine credential. Does it help out for the reserves? Do you get paid on the time you get on the weekends, and how much is it? Okay, so yes, for the first question, absolutely. I think that would be super helpful. I think that I think it would help you on multiple levels. And in the immediacy, I'm pretty sure that having a merchant marine credential, you should be able to enlist at higher than E1. So you would could be enlisted like an E2 or E3, so you'd be getting paid more when you graduate. I think that part I would be shocked if you couldn't. But and then outside of that, I mean, depending on what rating you go, like if you were to go MST, again, I'm an MST, so I'm biased, but uh, I think it would be really helpful as a lot of the missions, I think, in that field, the skill sets that you would bring with that license would translate really well over to the reserves, and then vice versa. Like the things that you learn on the reserve side would also, I think, would help you on on that side. So yes, absolutely. And then do you get paid on the time you get on the weekends, and how much? Yes, you do. And in fact, um, I pre-screened this question and prepared for it. So I went ahead and pulled up because it's 2024 now. They just released the 2024 pay scale. So I am going to drop a link right now to a very large, convoluted database of pay for the reserves. Hold on a second. Coast Guard Reserve Pay Chart 2024. There we go. All right. So that link right there will show you the pay chart. And essentially how it reads is you cross-reference on the side with the rank. So the rank is listed on the left side, and then on the top it puts how many years you've served. So you get paid more for how long you've been in. So say like, okay, go to an E6 with 10 years in, you would make, and then it actually subdivides it by the gross pay for the year, doing the math of coming in every month. And then it also does each individual drill weekend and then each individual drill. And as I've mentioned in the past, you get 4 drills for a standard weekend because you get 2 per day. A drill is a 4 hour period. So you get 2 for each work day, 4 for the weekend. Anyway, so for E6 with 10 years, it would be 4,387 for the year, and then $146 per 4 hour drill, and then 585 for the weekend. But yes, this chart I just posted has uh, all the pay for all the ranks. Okay, let's see here. I think there was one more on here that I like. There was one more on here. Just I wasn't saying there's one more on here. One more on here. Okay. One more question on here. I've also been told as a reservist doing BM, I'll be scraping toilets while the active duty BMs are out doing their thing. I'm looking to be a BM Blue Guard, or I think it's called Small Boat Crew, in Station St. Petersburg, Florida. Any knowledge on that? Not a lot. Again, I'm not a BM. This is a great question for an actual BM. And as I said before, I'm going to try to eventually. I'm going to try to have every rating come on this channel at some point, and I'm working on it. Like I said earlier in the stream, I have an OS recruiter coming on soon. Um, so I don't have a lot of specifics on that. As a reservist doing a BM, you'll be scraping toilet. Uh, I mean, it's definitely possible, but I would say it shouldn't be something where because you're a reservist you're doing that. Like it might be something where you, because you're non-qualified, you're waiting for A school, you're a break-in, whatever, they make you do kind of shitty work like that. But it shouldn't be because you're a reservist. And honestly, in today's Coast Guard, it's it's about training. It's about you know being proficient in your job. They should be training you in the job. They shouldn't be making you do menial work while other people are getting trained. So, and again, I can't promise anything on that, but that that shouldn't be the case. That was certainly not my experience in the MST world, but of course that I was in MST, so it might be different. That's a good question. I'm going to keep this question on my radar, and I'm going to try to talk to some BMs that might be able to give some insight on that and maybe even get one on the channel. Let's see. Forgive me for the bombardment of questions. It's no problem. You're actually the only one asking questions this time, so it's not so bad. There have been a couple times in the past where I was actually having trouble keeping up with some of them, but let's see. For the, let's see, as active duty following basic, how important is the dream sheet? Is that something that's actually honored? Is it merely for fun? No, I don't. So I'm not. I'm not active, but I no. I don't think it's for fun. I think it's honored pretty strongly. I think that uh, the only thing is just keep in mind that they're going to go with the needs of the service, but they definitely do use that, and they will make every effort to marry the two, merge the needs of the service with what the member wants, and that's why you tier it. That's why you put the order of preferences. I think, total side note here, but I think we need tiered voting in the United States political arena. I'm not going to get into politics. That's as far as I'll go politically. I'm just saying I think that some kind of tiered voting would really be a good idea. Choice is good. I think we need choices, more choices. All right, I'll leave it at that. Let's see here. Are there any other questions I wanted to get to? Okay, this is a good question about, let's see. I mentioned earlier in the stream, if you're just now joining us, well, I guess I put it in the title as well. So there's that. But this recording is going to double as a podcast episode, assuming the audio is good. So we'll see. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Can you talk about becoming an officer in the Coast Guard? How does someone with a degree become an officer? They still go to boot camp, then OCS, or straight to OCS? It could be either. You can do. I know people that have done both. You can definitely not go to boot camp and still become an officer. I've seen people who have a degree go through boot camp and then go through OCS. The advantage there is that you can make a more impressive package as a currently enlisted Coast Guard member than you probably could if you weren't. I mean, all things being equal, meaning, right? If you have a degree and all your other accomplishments, whatever they are, if that's all the same either way, being in the Coast Guard already, I think, is going to be advantageous to that. So, but you can do either one. Essentially, if you have a degree, I'm colorblind, so I can't. But if you're in the Coast Guard, if you're enlisted and you have a degree, you would apply for OCS. Basically, you would talk to your chain of command, and they'll provide you with all the information you need. But you would have to make a package. I think you would have to do like an e-resume, essentially like your own resume of your time in the Coast Guard, or if you were not in the Coast Guard, then obviously outside, but you would do a resume of sorts. You would do your accomplishments. You would have to get signed off by people in your chain that basically endorse you. So it's a big, long process, but it can be done. There's other ways to go officer. If you have a law degree, you can go in as a direct commission as a lawyer. I think they also have that for doctor. They also have that for pastors. In fact, if you've just gone through boot camp, you might have had a Navy pastor, because I know that we have, or they call chaplains, they call them, but a lot of Navy chaplains they do like periods of duty for the Coast Guard. So they actually wear the Coast Guard uniform, but they're Navy. And anyway, but yeah, that's another way you can do it. They essentially take on the commission of a lieutenant. Like they'll come in as a lieutenant in 03, and you're using your, whether it's doctor, lawyer, chaplain, whatever it is, and then that'll kind of be your specialty when you join. So that's another way to do it. In fact, actually, I've talked about this I think I talked about this in the second episode of the podcast. So please check that out as well. I think I went into detail on the warrant path, so I won't regurgitate that whole thing right now. But I did talk about that in episode 2 on the podcast. So check that out. Let's see here. Okay, there's a few more. I'm not going to be able to answer all the questions tonight, but let's see. All right, there's a couple of new questions on here. How long are the smoke sessions in boot camp? Okay, that's a good question. And then the one before it, along with that, as someone who has a girlfriend, we're aiming to start a family one day. What is your tip in balancing the two? Okay, I'll start with the smoke session question because that'll be a quicker answer. The smoke sessions, they felt like they were forever. I think somebody said that the CCs were not allowed to do them for more than 5 minutes, something like that. I don't know if it was like 5 or 10 minutes or some, seemed way shorter than it actually was. And I don't know if that was a joke or if that was serious, but I do remember somebody saying that at some point. But I remember them feeling like they never ended, which I'll circle back to what I keep saying about endurance. I mean, I've said it on this channel probably 100 times, getting in endurance shape, because it feels like it never ends sometimes. I mean, it feels like it just goes on and on and on. I mean, maybe it's only 10 minutes, but personally, I don't think it was. Some of the big ones felt like they went on for quite a long time. But I do think that the smoke sessions were more a matter of quantity than quality. And what I mean by that is, I think we had a whole lot of smoke sessions versus not necessarily having one that was really long. Like you just had them a lot, especially in the early. I think in like the first 3 weeks, there were more of them because it was a lot of, well, for one, we were messing up a lot. You mess up a lot at the beginning, but it's designed that way, right? You're going to screw up at the beginning because you don't know what the hell you're doing. So you get punished a lot more in the first 3 weeks. But also they're really trying to set the tone. They're trying to see who's not going to make it. And as I recall, it got a little bit more under control in later weeks. But they went on for a long time. Okay, and then the other question, I am married, yes. We're aiming to start a family one day. What's your tip in balancing the two? Yes, I can definitely. I'm married with a family and I'm in the reserve. So I don't remember if you mentioned if you're thinking of going active or reserve. But if you're going reserve, I'll just answer broadly. So if you're balancing the two, I've subscribed to the philosophy that my first chief said to me, which was family comes first. So I and I believe that. I think it's really important to me, you know. So at the end of the day, making decisions that are going to be right for my wife and kids, that's going to allow me to be there to support them. That's where my ultimate loyalty lies, is my family. So um, I would say my tip is, I mean, gosh, these are great general questions that are really making me think. Um, I think that's why I wanted to jump on the smoke session one, because that was like a nice black and white question. Um, gosh, it, you you have to get. I mean, as I always say, you have to get all the information you can about whatever endeavor you're trying to do, and then look at the situation, your life situation, and then kind of you almost have to use your imagination a little bit and go down the line of like what could happen and kind of explore those. And it's almost like a choose your own adventure novel. And but it's tough. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's difficult. It There have been times over the last 5 or 6 years that I have been really close to saying like I'm gonna get out. And even once you pass that 10-year mark, it starts to get tough to say I'm going to leave, because now you're already halfway there. You're on the back nine to getting a retirement. But it's tough sometimes, but it it really has to do with the people that you're working with. My command, really, the personality of the people I work with really can make or break my experience. Right now, I am really blessed with a terrific command. My morale and well-being is 180-degree difference from where it was a year ago. I was in a not a good place, um, and even separately, like 3 or 4 years before that, I had a kind of a crummy situation going on, and I kind of was questioning being in the reserves then. So for me, the upside to it has been great. I've met so many amazing people, made great friendships, and I've I'm really glad that I've done it. I'm right now, my tough decision is going to be, do I stay in? I hit 20 next year, and I'm committed through the year after that, through 21. And I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. I'm actually leaning on getting out because what I said before about my family, my kids are they're getting older. They're young, but they're not really like little kids anymore. And I think being able to do things with them, I can, like, I can do a lot with my kids. We go on trips together, we do things. It's not like I can't. You totally can. But there's that little whisper in your ear. There's that Jiminy Cricket, conscience. You have to be aware of your schedule, your reserved schedule. You have commitments throughout the year that you have to be there on certain weekends. And like a lot of times it's like all hands drills, and you've got to do your 2 weeks, and it adds up. The commitments add up. A lot of it is, it's not necessarily like any one thing that's incredibly difficult, but it adds up. There's a lot of little things that you have to do. And sometimes I think it would be nice to not have to worry about that anymore. And as much as I've loved my time, and it has been an incredibly rewarding experience, there is a part of me that's, I think I'm ready to hang it up. The problem is, you start looking at the reserve retirement, and I've been talking now on the channel a little bit about it, and about like how the retirement system works. And man, if I don't make so much more money, if I stay in, like, it's crazy. Like, if I go to 30, even if I never advance again and I go 30, I basically almost double my pension. That's just if I just sit on my ass for the next 11 years and just don't advance anymore. So if I advance, or let's say I go warrant, I've thought about that. I might want to go warrant. Um, or if I just make it to Master Chief or whatever, like, it's balloons in terms of the potential. So then I'm the one. I'm always talking about like doing a tree, pros and cons. That's where then I have to do that. I have to be like, okay, well, money, uninhibited weekend vacations with the kids where I don't have to worry about, or money, or not having to get a damn flu shot, or I'm not a flu shot, a HIV blood draw every 2 years, or having to go in and get my PHA every year, or go in and do a weigh-in every 6 months, or get a piss test every, randomly between 3 to 6 months. You're not having to shave my face or have my hair cut a certain way. I mean, I joined basically when I became an adult, so my entire adult life. And sometimes I think like, it would be nice to be a free adult who like doesn't have to report to people. Anyway, I'm getting off on a long-winded answer. I guess for I mean, for balancing the two, it's tough. I mean, that's my long-winded way of saying it. It's tough. There's not like a one size fits all uh, answer to that. It it A lot of it's going to come down to what you value. I think the one thing I can say is, and I'm not judging. I always say this, like, before any answer, like, I don't judge anything, any situation, whatever. But if family is not the most important thing to you, if your career is more important, then it might be tough. Like, because it's it can be easy to kind of leave your family behind, um, active or reserve. Um, like for me, I did the COVID response um, back in 2021. I did a couple uh, vaccination deployment, like mass vaccination deployments, and I actually really liked it. It was actually a very moving experience, just because, especially in the first deployment, because it was during that first wave, and it was when like not anybody could get the vaccine yet. It was like the high risk people could get it, and so people were coming through who hadn't seen their family in a year, and it was emotional for a lot of people. Anyway, not to get off on tangent, but the point being, I loved that deployment, and I wanted to stay around. I wanted to keep doing. I wanted to go back and do another one, and I'm 4 months away from my family, and my wife is running single mom duty all that time, and that's sort of like the spouses are kind of like the unsung heroes. It's easy to be like, oh, salute the veterans. It's great. Support the troops and have Veterans Day and give me military discounts and thank me for my service. But like, the spouses are oftentimes the ones doing a lot. I'm off, feeling like I'm doing a mission that I love, but my wife is struggling. So I guess my point there being, if your balance is geared towards like career, then you might want to rethink the family. And I'm not giving advice, by the way. I'm just saying, like, depending on, you have to do some soul searching and kind of figure out where the values lie. So anyway, good question though. All right. Let's see. Okay, now we're starting to get some questions coming in. I'm going to the reserves as an ME. Any tips? I am trying to get. I do have an ME, an ME chief that I'm gonna get on. We've been talking. Yeah, in fact, he actually lives close to me, so I'm gonna try to get him on here and give a better answer for that question. I don't really have any tips that relate to ME specifically. Um, does the company get smoked every day? If so, how many times? Uh, yes and yes. How many times do you get smoked? Yes. But no, yes, I remember it. Pretty sure it was every day, especially in the first half, I would say. Definitely every day. Um, but probably every day throughout the whole 8 weeks, but multiple times a day earlier on. But how many times? Uh, Again, I think it got better as it went along. So a lot, like first weekend was a smoke session. I mean, really, the first weekend was just a smoke session. That's how I remember it. Maybe people that have gone through more recently can give a more updated answer, but that was my memory of it. Was that it just that's just what it was. It was a never ending smoke session. Um, I currently work for the sheriff's department. Any advice for a 29-year-old? I know I'm going to be considered the old man. All right, I'm about to turn 39. So you want if you're saying 29 is old, then we might have problems here. Um, for a 29-year-old. I mean, uh, if I have videos on, you're in that middle ground. You're kind of in that middle ground where you're still youngish, but you definitely would be old for boot camp. That's true. Like if you went through boot camp, you'll actually it's fairly to highly, not sure exactly, but probably in that range, like fairly to highly likely that one of your CCs will be younger than you. So um, that'll be an interesting avenue. I remember when I went through. Yeah, that's true. The 29, 30 year olds, they seemed really old to me when I was 19 going through. Um, so yeah, you'll probably be squad leader. You'll probably be tasked with things like they'll probably expect more out of you just because of that. So look out for that. Um, and I mean, I think that I think it's advantageous to be older. And I've talked about this I have some videos on being like 40 and joining. So obviously you're not there yet, but you're closer to that now than you are to 18. So, or you're kind of right in the middle. But um, I think mentally, I think you're a lot closer to 40 at 29 than 18 because I think between 18 and 24 or 25, I think you really develop into a fully functioning adult. So I think that being that age is advantageous in terms of I think you're going to be more well-rounded. You're going to be emotionally intelligent. So you're going to be able to compartmentalize what's going on better and not take things personally. You're going to be a better leader. You're going to be a mentor to the younger folks. I think where it would be tough is like, I don't know, for me personally, I look at it like if I went through boot camp now, I would just be like annoyed. It'd be like, okay, all right, I got it. I got it, man. Like, I'm gonna put my boots under the rack. Like, chill. Like I feel like that's how in my head I would be. I wouldn't be intimidated. I would probably be struggling to not laugh, but that's from the perspective of somebody who's been through it. So, but I think in general, like it might be tough especially if you're, if you've got a lot of life experience and you've got some guy who's like 25 telling you how, like, what a horrible POS you are, and like, why can't you do anything, like just berating you, and knowing that this is all kind of a game, it might get kind of tiring. But yeah, I just remember the older guys in my company being squad leaders, and they were good dudes. That's what I remember. I remember both of them. There were two of them that I remember really well. They were like 29 or 30, and they were really good guys. They were like good, just solid shipmates, and I think that's what, if that's what's going to be expected of you. And I think that if at 29, if you're deciding to join, well, I mean, and you're a sheriff, so yeah, you'll be good. You'll be good. Um, let's see. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to cut this off soon. Um, let's see. I'm gonna try to find what's one good one good question to end on here, and I will. I turned on live chat replay. YouTube needs to have a like they don't automatically do that. You have to opt for it. And the first couple live streams I did, they didn't have that, and so I went back and I couldn't find any of the questions in the chat. So I was like, "Damn you, YouTube!" But you have to. So I pre-selected it. So I'm gonna go back, and any questions that I didn't get to, I'll either answer it in the chat, or I'll do a video on it. In fact, actually, while I'm thinking about it, let me put in the voicemail number I mentioned earlier, just for anybody that doesn't have it here. What is the number? I don't know. Let me find it. 1 second here. I don't know my own number. This is a voicemail that's set up specifically for, you know what? Why don't I just go to the video? I did a video and I put it in the, there we go. Can I see it there? Let's see. Let's just watch. How about let's just watch it together really quick. Let's watch the, here we go. We're gonna do something crazy. Hey everyone, special announcement. We have just started a voicemail for the channel. So if you'd like to leave a message with a question or comment, I will feature it on a future video and hopefully be able to provide a good answer to your question. So the number for that is 209-645-2330. Okay, 209-645-2330. Let's type it in here. 209-645-2330. There we go. That's the voicemail number. I set that up. It's just for this channel. It's not my personal number. It's just for this. So it's that number receives text too. So that's where I got a lot of my questions today. People texting me those questions. That's great. And so anyway, you can call that and leave a voicemail, or leave a text. Let's see here. One last question. Let's see here. Full-time. Can you do full-time for X amount of years, then transition to reserve and continue towards a time in 20 to 30 retirement? How does that work? Is it a good idea? I'm 37 and in process, trying to get in as an ET. I think I'm the old dog here trying to get in. Okay. All right. And then the other one is, oh, okay. I'm gonna circle back to that one about because that's a follow-up to the family one. Okay, these will be my last two questions here. Okay, so the first one, can you do full-time for X amount of years, then transition to reserve and continue towards time in for 20 to 30? How does that work? And is it a good idea? Yes, you can. And yes, it is a good idea. That is actually probably the biggest thing that I repeatedly will say to active folks who are thinking of getting out, especially if they haven't hit 20 yet. So it's for people that are wanting to get out because they want to be able to pursue another job, or whatever. I always at least say consider the reserves, because that way you get to keep all the time you've put in. So I've done videos on this as well. So check out my videos on calculating a reserve retirement, and I really get into the nitty gritty on this. But essentially, you get points for. I have kiddos asleep. Thought I heard one coming out. You get 365 for each year because you get a point for each day. So active duty, you get 365. So those points translate directly to the same points you get on the reserves. So you get a point for each drill you do. So you get 4 points for a weekend. Remember, we talked about drill points earlier. So essentially, long story short, all that time counts towards your retirement. So now you're doing a reserve retirement, but you're doing a reserve retirement that has 8 years of 365 points, when normally a standard reserve year is 75 points. So yes, you can totally do that, and you'll have a kick-ass retirement because of that. So it's definitely a good idea. But yeah, you can totally do that. Okay, and then in terms of building for my family, I'm aiming to do 6, investing in the TSP, acquiring my real estate license, and so on, as financial freedom is important to me. What was your journey when you began? Oh, okay. That's a good question. Well, I had quite a I think of how to say it. I was in a much different place. I'll put it like that. I was 19. I was in college. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, and didn't know if I was going to go past the 6 years initial enlistment and the 2 years inactive, because I didn't know what I was going to do. I had thought about serving, and it was something I was almost about to join the Navy when I was in high school. And then my grandfather ended up getting sick, and I wanted to stay around to be with him. And it just ended up working out that Coast Guard Reserve was really good for me. And then I just became a grown up, and it's just been a part of my life. It's my entire adult life. It's just, everyone knows, like, Chris is in the reserves. Like, that's part of Chris's story. And it's been great. So it's really just, it's all I know. I haven't had to actively think about, like, how am I going to fit this into my life, because it's always been part of my adult life. So yeah, that's where I was at when I began. And then I was a single college 19-year-old kid, and now I'm married with 2 kids, and I'm good. I'm very content in life, and I'm very grateful for my time in the reserves, and I'm deciding if I'm going to stay in or not in the next couple of years. And that's but I'm really happy with where I'm at right now. So it's definitely doable. That's what I'm saying. So anyway, great questions, really great questions. Thank you for being here, and look for this to soon to be released, edited as a podcast. And if you don't know, I do have a podcast in addition to the channel. So and I upload the episodes to this channel anyway, so you can also get them there. But I also have a podcast that's on Spotify. So I think I have a link to that in my community posts. Anyway, so check it out. This will be released soon as a podcast episode as well. And I hope everyone's doing well and having a great new year. And once the weather improves a little bit, I'll get back to doing more official episodes from my shed. So have a good night.